I see a show of hands here who has heard of Dark Souls? Okay. I count like maybe 6 or 7 hands. Here's the interesting thing to ask. Who here has played Dark Souls? Okay, same hands going up. Who here has finished Dark Souls? 2. So that is very interesting, isn't it? And I'll tell you why in a second. So a little bit about me first. Megan gave me a good introduction, a bunch of stuff on screen about me. But the key thing that I want to kind of zoom in on here is I've been doing this quite a long time. Why I have a reasonably young face, despite being in cybersecurity a long time, is because I started in the industry when I was really young. And I managed to score a lot of cybersecurity leadership position when I was quite young too, in my early 20s. So it's, although I am reasonably old now, the hair will go grey eventually. I've seen some you-know-what throughout my career already. And some of that is actually due to the downside of being the youngest person in the room sometimes, and other people here can maybe relate to that as well. But I've been a lifelong gamer as well, and a key mentor for me to push through those that discomfort to get myself to where I want to earlier than expected was actually lessons I learned from a game called Dark Souls. So when I made this talk, I was thinking carefully about how can I make this talk relevant to the different people in the room? Because surely everyone here is to do with cybersecurity, but not everyone here is a cybersecurity leader, although there's leaders here as well. And not everyone here is a gamer. So I've made it for 4 types of people, and there'll be a little bit of something for everyone. So if you don't know what Dark Souls is, you've never even played a video game before, there's still stuff that you can relate to here, hopefully. So for leaders of today, I'm going to say things that you've likely heard of before, but told through a pretty unique lens, stuff that should bring that stuff to the forefront of your mind. As leaders, we all know those things like, oh, take some time for yourself, de-stress, do this, do that. But that's really easy to forget when you're as busy as you are and you've got all those responsibilities on your plate. For leaders of tomorrow, so people who want to move up into leadership, these are the good lessons to know, and maybe how Dark Souls can help teach you them. For gamers of today, if you haven't played Dark Souls, you should go do it. And for gamers of tomorrow, people who do not or have not played Dark Souls and don't play games either, do not play Dark Souls for your first game or you'll never want to play games again, and you'll soon find out why. So what the hell is Dark Souls? Well, it is an action RPG game, role-playing game, if you will. It was released back in 2011, but there's quite an interesting twist on there versus what you would have seen in most games if you're familiar with them. Most games nowadays, and I would say for quite a long time, maybe 10, 15 years, they've had a lot of guides. You open the game, it tells you where to go, what to do, who to talk to. There's an arrow that you got to follow, like a hamster on a wheel, telling you where you need to go, right? There is no guides in Dark Souls. There is no map. There's no difficulty setting. If the game gets too hard, you either give up or get better. The old joke in the Dark Souls area, Dark Souls circles is get good. That's what you have to do. And Dark Souls also lets you go wherever you want to go. It will let you go to the worst possible place that you have no business being at that point in the game, and you find out the hard way that you shouldn't be there. Dark Souls is really well known and quite notorious in gaming circles, and so much that it has become an adjective. And to describe how that adjective works, I'll relate it back to cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is the Dark Souls of tech-related fields. A lot of people in this room would agree, meaning it's very, very difficult. But it's a very, very rewarding experience, just like cybersecurity is. There's many translatable lessons from Dark Souls that you can translate into what you do every day. Dark Souls is more than just a game to me, and most people who have played it will also agree with that. It changed my perception of a lot of things, such as my attitude towards failure and any obstacles that I come across. It made me more courageous towards going into situations or conversations where I don't have all the information and don't know exactly what to do. It made me very, very patient. That and being a parent has made me top level in terms of my level of patience nowadays. Anyone in the room who is a parent or a Dark Souls player or both can certainly understand that. It changed generally the way that the cogs work in my brain as well, in terms of how I approach things, and you'll kind of hear that by the end of this, how those cogs operate. And it made me essentially not afraid of embracing challenge. It made me comfortable with being uncomfortable is really a good way to sum it up. Now, my Dark Souls journey was not without much difficulty. I gave up on Dark Souls. As I said, you got to get good or give up. And I gave up about 3, maybe even 4 times. I may have lost count at this point. But the game pulled me back in because it's got that addictive nature in it where you just don't want to give up. and you'll soon find out why it's so satisfying to play. I'm not a good gamer, right? So if you think, oh, you've been gaming your whole life, that's why you did it, I'm actually not that good. I died more than 500 times in Dark Souls, and that was just when I decided I'd stop counting and making myself depressed. Consider that maybe over 1,000. Even on one boss in Dark Souls, of which there is many in there, I've spent more than 80 times on a boss. Anyone here who's fought the Bell Gargoyles? Yep, sucks. And the game's supposed to take, if you were perfect, Dark Souls will take you around 40 hours to complete. I spent over 100 on that sucker. And even if I play it again now, I still can't do it in 40, right? Some things to know about Dark Souls that are quite relevant to what we talk about here, and I won't spend a whole lot of time on this, is that Dark Souls has some ways to help you. There's tools, just like there is in our cybersecurity program. There's healing potions, but there's a trade-off of them, just like there's a trade-off for any tool you want to use in your cybersecurity environment. You can't move much at all when you take a health potion, so you're stuck in one place. There's a big trade-off there, so you've got to use it wisely. Everything in Dark Souls has a cost, just like everything in your cyber program has a cost, and cost is stamina. You need stamina to attack and also defend as well. If you run out of that, you can't do anything, and you're going to get flattened very, very quickly, which you'll see in my journey shortly. On top of that, just like we can level up ourselves with education and certifications and that, they propose to make you stronger in Dark Souls. I soon found out that they're only really 10% of making yourself stronger, and the rest is on you, which I think is quite relevant to the real world as well. Bonfires in Dark Souls are the safe zone. Remember that. That's the place where you can go, replenish your resources, but it respawns all the enemies around you, so you don't want to be taking too many rests. All right, so let me walk you through my journey in Dark Souls with lovely pictures and whatnot. So I first opened Dark Souls on my computer, and I'm viewed with this screen here. And I'm viewed with this background music. This spooky, what is that, violins or something along those lines? Not some dun-dun-dun-dun action music or anything like that to make me feel powerful. Nothing but foreboding music, right? And I press the start button to go in. And already the game hasn't told me welcome, hasn't told me anything. It's expected me to make a decision without any real context on what these decisions means, except for really average explanations. So it asks me what class I want to be. I go through each of them. I'm given very average explanations, like knight, low-ranking knight, high health, solid armor, not easily toppled. That sounds like the one I want to go for as a new player, right? So I pick the knight. Then I wake up in a place called the Northern Undead Asylum. Don't ask me what that is. The game just tells you that, and you get in there. I find a key in front of me that will open the cell. And I walk down a corridor. Actually, just let me verify, because my angle's different to yours. Is that so dark that no one can see it? It is good? Okay, cool. Projectors, right? So I walk down this corridor, and there's no sound, there's no music, just the sound of my footsteps, of my character, plate clanking along, echoing off the walls within. And I come across these 3 red lines on the ground, and I say, oh, you know what? Maybe Dark Souls isn't so bad after all. There was a message on the ground telling me what buttons to press to attack. I thought, oh, maybe people talk it up to be more difficult and misleading than it actually is. So I thought I'm going to be okay. I come across our friend at the bonfire, the first safe zone, and I'm feeling pretty good. I've made it that far. I've killed a few enemies, skeletons along the way. It was easy. So I'm feeling pretty good. Then I reach a big door, and I open it ever so slowly, thinking that I'm ready for anything that could happen on the other side. There's a boss already. And I was not prepared for this. And at this point in the game, by the way, that game hasn't given you a real weapon yet. It's given you a broken sword. And that's not very helpful to beating that guy, let me tell you. His name's the Asylum Demon. And I saw a screen that I will see many, many hundreds of times throughout the game. You died. Anyone who's played Dark Souls will be very, very familiar with this screen. So the first lesson here that I think can relate back to cybersecurity leadership or any leadership is expect the unexpected. Some of us in this room have walked into a boardroom and been asked questions that we did not expect. It was either very business level or very technical, and we weren't prepared for what we were going to get asked. On top of that, breaches that happen in your first day, first week, that's happened to me. or maybe even your first few months of working as well. Be prepared for the unexpected. Okay, so this time I come in and I'm prepared. I'm expecting the Asylum Demon to drop down. I dodge behind him and I get a hit in. I finally get a hit in. And look how much damage I do. Direct your eyes to the bottom right corner. That big red health bar is the boss's health bar. If you don't see it having gone down, that's because I did 4 damage and it really didn't go down much at all. And then I see that bloody screen again. So lesson 2, I'm sitting here trying to attack the boss with a half-broken sword thinking that somehow I can actually win. And this happens to us in our cybersecurity program all the time. People try to do network segmentation the way we were doing it 10 or 15 years ago, and they're suffering, they can't win. And they just instead trying to keep attack with a broken sword, when really, maybe you don't have the right tool, full stop. So always have a look at, if your tool is ineffective and things seem impossible, there's every chance that you're doing it wrong, or there's a much better tool or technology out there to help you. Okay, so this time I come into the room, I'm expecting the boss. I know it's probably futile to try and attack him. I use my eyes and I actually see a message on the ground that the game has left me. And that message is, get away. I thought, if I sit there and study the situation properly, I'm actually instructed that I have no business fighting that boss. And it was like a test of me from the game. Mind you, there are players out there on the internet that really have killed that boss with a broken sword, but that player is definitely not me, and that took them hours. So no, I don't wish that upon anyone. So now I'm through the door. So there's a lesson already to translate from this, is that look and study a situation carefully when you face it, and always trying to come back and attack something with a new angle. The big thing that I think of, and it's easy to forget when you're in a security position or leadership, is that you're too busy to go out there and talk to other people, to attend industry events, to some vendors been hitting you up to do some technology demo, and anyone in here who's in a security position knows that happens far too much. But do make some of your time for that, because that might just be the innovation you're looking for. And one of the big things my team does when we build up strategy for organizations is show them innovative ways of solving their problems, because we get to see what's out there in the industry. That's our main job, right? So definitely dedicate some of your time to that. Okay, so I've gone the long way. I've gone down that door in the Northern Undead Asylum, and I've picked myself up a sword and a shield. Now I'm feeling good. I'm feeling like I might actually be able to get through this. I thought that I can run away from the boss and not have to face that anymore. Turns out there's this thing called a fog wall. And that fog wall I will see many more times in Dark Souls, and usually if you hit one of them, there's some terrible thing waiting for you on the other side, which I soon found out. So I go through the fog wall not knowing what's on the other side, and I look down and I see that boss looking up at me. I study the situation, I think carefully to myself, just like I taught you to do before. Study the situation carefully before you plan your attack. Anyone who's played the game knows what's about to happen to me here, but I'll soon tell you. That boss betrayed the rules of my assumptions from how other games work, where you're up here, enemy down there, can't get you anymore. He jumped up, and there I see that bloody screen again. And my face in the corner is exactly what I felt at that time. So, what can we learn about this? Well, you have controls in place. Never assume that those controls are going to work tomorrow, and never assume that if an attacker hits your MFA or what have you, that they're just going to give up. Your adversary's techniques will change all the time when facing your defenses. So we all know about defense in depth. Bring that to the forefront of your mind, but also never assume that what's safe today continues to be safe tomorrow. Even though this conference is saying good leaders trust today, tomorrow, make sure you don't trust your controls tomorrow, okay? You need more. So one thing that I find that relates back to cyber often that we find on my team is that organizations need to re-review their strategy. We have long strategies, they're usually 3 or 5 years. And one of the most successful organizations we find review them once every 1 or 2 years, and maybe even get someone different from last time. Or if they themselves built it, get some external advice on that strategy, because that's where you start to see things around a more adversarial angle. That's how we develop controls and discuss them with clients. It's the idea that what are adversaries doing now in the last 12 months? Because your strategy that you've been executing the last 3 years likely hasn't taken that into account. Take the adversarial angle when you develop your controls, re-review it often, and assume less that your controls are going to be effective forever. MFA bypass. MFA was like one of the most It still is actually one of the most well-touted controls to protect you. Nowadays, MFA bypass is built into most phishing kits. Evil Jinx, if you want to go look at it, look it up after this. So tutorials are on YouTube. If you've got a spare afternoon and GitHub access, which everyone does, you can spin that up yourself. So here I am, I'm back in the asylum again. And I feel like I'm in an asylum, truly, at this point, while I'm playing the game. And I get back up to that point. This time I do not hesitate, because I have learnt my lesson about that. I dive down and I attack. And oh my God, I've done 363 damage versus 4. I'm feeling pretty good at this moment. I've realized I've executed something called a plunging attack. Didn't realize how I did that, but it worked. And the boss's health is already down by pretty close to half. But what happened then? I got cocky. And I thought that it's going to be easy mode after that. Sure enough, he smashed me down again. So don't let your guard down until a threat's dealt with is a lesson to take home here. We've all been, well, hopefully some of us haven't, but most of us here have been through some form of incident response in the past. And we all know kind of the best practices around that is contain it, eradicate the threat, and recover. But there's a big part hiding in there called look for related activity. And the amount of organizations that don't do that, so let's say a user's endpoint gets compromised and then the credentials get used somewhere, they laser their focus in on what that user has done, where they've moved, and all of the IP addresses around that. But what about related activity? What about your other users? Are any of them behaving abnormally since then? Because the attacker doesn't likes to use, let's call attack in depth and make sure that they're trying to compromise other things and other accounts along the way in case you shut down the main thing that they have. All right, so I take a step back at this point, pretty much ready to give up on the game. Because I've got these challenges. I've got a challenge where I get killed in 1 or 2 hits, so I can't really make good progress in. There's not a lot of room for error. Every time I drink that health potion I told you about before, well, I get stuck, I can't move, and I get flattened by the boss straight away. Every time I try and block him with my lovely shield that I got, as you heard before, I run out of stamina, and I can't do anything else after that. And I got no stamina left to actually have any good offense. And I also found that I move very, very slowly and roll very, very slowly. So getting out of the way of these attacks is also really difficult for me. And as I get out of the way, I'm never close enough to actually land a hit. So I'm pretty doomed at this point, and I keep getting killed quickly, and I begin to question my abilities. I begin to actually blame the game and think there's something wrong with it and not me. So I went out and sought advice. And soon enough, I found out that I picked Knight. Remember him? High hit points, not easily toppled. He also doesn't move very easily either. And so I found that the key was to remove his pants. And he can move quite well, actually. That's not really translatable workplace advice, so don't take that one home with you. But it does relate if we use a metaphor. You'll hear why in a second. The reason I'm getting killed on 1 or 2 hits is really I need to learn to dodge. Right? When we talk about risk mitigation, preventative is a really good way. Stop that problem from happening before it even hits you, right? Rather than just a reactive control where you spot an incident and you react to the incident. Proactive needs to be part of it as well. And that's just what dodging is in Dark Souls, which requires good timing and good strategy, like our security programs. Drinking health potions shouldn't... Your instinct is to drink that when you're in a panic and you've got barely any health left and you're basically ready to give up. That's the wrong time. Be proactive and do it strategically. For example, when you get out of the way of a boss, drink the health potion then. Don't drink it when he's just about to hit you and you go, oh no, I need my health for this hit. That's when you're going to get flattened. Hiding behind your shield, just like us hiding behind our controls or a single control, leads to the end of you, because you run out of stamina. So you need to use other controls such as dodges on top of that. You can already imagine how this relates back to cybersecurity and our programs. So the key thing is to have a strategy, study his moves, and be patient for the right time to strike and do your things. And I also found out that I couldn't just get away with killing 5 skeletons over and over again and leveling myself up, because the big thing everyone told me is it's actually you who has to get better. You with your reaction times and your learning and your experience and pushing through that discomfort. It's not leveling your health up to 1 billion points, because even that doesn't help you very much, just like the real world. But the big thing that I took away from all of this is that everyone who gave me advice said, I know what you're going through. It sucks. It sucked for all of us, but push through. It's worth it for what's on the other side. So the big lesson there is don't forget you're not alone. Every single person who you look at and go, geez, they're just killing it, aren't they? Man, they're so confident when they do that. They're either crapping themselves and covering it up well. I'll put it that way. People can cover that up pretty well, or they learn to, or they've been through hell and back to get where they are. They've been just like you, who may be too nervous or not confident in certain situations. So attend industry events like you are today. And we've all been part of those sort of roundtables and discussions and that. I host them a fair bit in my role. And I often find that there's like one or two people at the table that talk and the rest stay silent. And someone who used to remain silent at those, or has from time to time, I'll tell you it's usually because people go, I'm afraid of asking a silly question. What if everyone else in this room knows more than me? They probably don't, and they're probably wondering the same thing you do. And every time I've heard someone ask a question and go, oh, this might be a stupid question, but they ask it, someone across the other side of the room goes, I'm so glad you asked that. I was wondering the same thing. So be that person. Be courageous. So I took on all this advice. I took my pants off as instructed, and I saw this screen, you defeated. And that means I killed the boss, and I actually got him. And I felt absolutely amazing at this moment. My heart was just pumping out of my chest, something that doesn't usually happen to me with games. I don't get that into them. But Dark Souls to this day can still do this for me. I couldn't wipe the smile off my face, despite the fact that in hindsight, I probably wasted hours and hours of my life trying to do this. But it felt absolutely fantastic. I had to go tell someone. My wife was the closest. She didn't give two shits about what my Dark Souls journey, but it was the best rush I've ever had. And I had this overwhelming sense of pride and accomplishment. I found out in my career you get the same thing when you push through that discomfort as well. So what are the Dark Souls lessons learned for two things? One, for being a cyber leader, and two, around cyber strategy. I'll talk about cyber strategy first. Picking defenses too heavy, like cost, like maintenance. Think about your controls right now. Does anyone require enormous amount of care and feeding? And how much value is that actually adding in your security program? Maybe you need to remove your heavy pants, metaphorically. Preventative measures, like the dodge I talked about before, are often a lot better than trying to just reduce damage once it's already happening. Having too much confidence in something like your shield or one control, that can lead to your demise, just like it did with my boss journey. Controls, don't apply them haphazardly. Have some kind of strategy. Like when people told me to take a step back and don't just try and hit him and do this and do that. Sit there and study what he's doing, understand your adversary, and make sure that your controls match what they're going to do as best you possibly can. When you have tools that don't do anything or aren't very effective, be honest with yourself and go, maybe there's a sunk cost here that I need to accept and remove and actually start again. Now, cyber leaders, what can we learn from this to take home with us? Don't judge situations too early. I gave plenty of examples of that. Gather all the right information. So do some reading, speak to some people. Note that if anything seems impossible in your cyber strategy or program, a lot of people I meet actually, because what's the word? I've been lucky to see and work on cyber strategies for pretty much every industry under the sun for being with Sekuro the last 3 years. And I hear the same thing every time, and that is, you've never seen someone like us before. We're unique. We've got these problems that you've never heard of before, and it's just going to be impossible to do a lot of the things that other clients do. Every single time I hear that, and every single time there's always a way forward. So make sure that if you think something's impossible, take that step back and ask around, get some advice, and go, is it just me doing something wrong? Is there a better way that I can go about this? Don't get overconfident in your strategy either. Assume that your defenses could be shut down at any time. And know that training will mildly help you to be a better leader. I won't discount that for sure, but it's actually often you who has to step up and go, this situation's going to suck. I don't want to have this. I don't want to present this. I don't want to talk about this, but you have to do it, and that will make you a better leader. And you will feel amazing, just like a Dark Souls boss, after you do it and you smash it. And even if you don't, you'll learn plenty. Practice and have a plan and don't panic. And remember, everybody sucks at the beginning and they suck less over time. So if you feel like it sucks for you right now, trust that you will always get better as long as you can push yourself through it like everyone else in this room had to. So the biggest lesson is get comfortable with discomfort, because I think the rewards are worth it, just like Dark Souls and just like in your cyber career, or even if you're in leadership now, there's always room to move up from where you are. There's some bonus lessons I learned from Dark Souls that I want to round this out with today. I soon found out that those messages on the ground can actually be left by other players, not just the game. And that means anyone can leave you advice. Anyone who's played will know this, but often right near a ledge, people leave these helpful messages like treasure ahead, try jumping off. I took that advice when I first got it, and I saw my favorite screen once again. So know that not all advice is trustworthy. Pick a good partner. I know one. And some advice, you need to learn when to not take it seriously, because it can be, over time, you'll start to realize that it just sounds ridiculous and there's no way this could be real advice. And there's plenty of that out there when you go read online about what to do in cybersecurity. I soon found out as well in Dark Souls that there's these things on the ground called summon signs, and they actually allow you to teleport another player's ghost into your game, and they can help you kill a boss. That's great. So make sure you use your summon signs and build the right people to help you. You don't have to do it all on your own. And know when to go to your business and go, I can't do this on my own, and this is the business case behind it. If you can't hire people, maybe someone you know to help. So what the hell is cybersecurity? Because it's the Dark Souls of tech-related fields, and it's pretty bloody difficult for all of us. Remember, it's hard for everyone, and leaders just have to be comfortable with it, and that's the key to success, I reckon, in here, is the gumption of pushing through that stuff, because none of it's easy, and there's no difficulty setting in cybersecurity either. We've got to keep on our toes, and it gets harder over time as more things get more complex, but if you get more comfortable with it, it won't feel so hard. And know that every challenge that, and I can tell you firsthand, not just in Dark Souls, but every challenge I've seen an organization have in the last 3 years of building cyber strategies, all could be overcome with the right level of advice and the right approach to it. So know that everything you're going through right now, there's probably a much easier way out if it's really, really difficult. Learn your adversaries' movesets and think about them when you're building out your strategy. Don't just get your controls from a framework that you found out there, because they're often higher level in nature and used to demonstrate maturity between two different parties, not to tell you what attackers are doing and what you have to do to protect yourself against them. Failure is a learning experience, and as a leader, you're going to get pretty stressed. Every leader in the room knows this. Actually, everyone in cybersecurity knows this. Manage your stamina and health and take a rest at the bonfire for yourself every now and then. And remember that the reward is often worth it when you go through those challenging experiences. So when you're in a boardroom, when you suffered a cyber incident, when something you tried to do didn't work, and you feel like in your head, metaphorically, you're seeing that screen, I want you to rethink what that screen says when you see it, because it's not about you died, it's about that. Thank you.